Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Katya, and today I'm sharing with you the books that I've picked to read for Women in Translation Month this August. I'm also going to be sharing with you 4 Korean authors who I think you should check out if you are struggling to think of a book that you would like to read for Women in Translation Month. These are all authors that I have recently read and books that I have loved. So without further ado, I'll start off with the books that I will be reading. Number 1, Solo Dance by Lee Katomi. Now, this is translated from the Japanese by Arthur Lee G. Morris. And the author, Lee Katomi, is a Taiwanese-born author. She is writer, translator, essayist, and mainly writes in Japanese. This book was first debuted in the original Japanese in 2017 under the title Hitori Mai, and it received the Gunzo New Writers Prize for Excellence, the 60th one. Translated last year, so very recent translation, and apparently her new book has won another award, so I'm expecting a lot actually from the author, new to me entirely. Like the author, her protagonist in Solo Dance, Cho No-ri, grew up in Taiwan and then left for Tokyo to pursue a master's degree, learn the language, and get a job. Now, Nori is 27 and working an office job in Tokyo, so it's based in Tokyo for part of this. But it says this book examines her depression, trauma, and obsession with death. While her colleagues are worrying about the economy, life insurance, policies, marriage and children, Nori has the added stress of keeping her sexuality hidden. So this sounds like a fascinating coming-of-age story about a gay person in Taiwan as well as in corporate Japan. I also recently read and reviewed Concerning My Daughter by Kim Hae-jin, which was translated by Jamie Chang from the original Korean. I'm interested to see whether Solo Dance and Concerning My Daughter have any overlapping experiences for the protagonists. Actually, the protagonist in Concerning My Daughter's mother, so the protagonist's daughter and Cho No-ri. That's going to be of interest to me. Next up is Aya, Life in Yop City by Marguerite Abouet. Now, I was really surprised. This is so heavy. I don't have to worry about the word count though, because it is a graphic novel, which is why I'm so surprised that it's so heavy, because with graphic novels I tend to expect something thin. But anyway, this is set in the Ivory Coast in 1978, and the story follows the studious and clear-sighted 19-year-old Aya, her easygoing friends, and their meddling relatives and neighbours. This is said to be a golden time for the Ivory Coast, when it was a sort of oasis of stability and influence in West Africa. It is very much based on the author's life, so Marguerite Abouet's youth in Yop City. It is said to be a wry, breezy account of the simple pleasures and private troubles of everyday life in Yop City. I love the illustrator's warm colours, and it just looks, I don't know, really alive. That's all I can say. But yeah, total chunker of a graphic novel. Next up, Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. Translated from the Spanish by Francis Riddle. The author is Argentinian. I have heard so much about this book, and probably you're watching and you're thinking, yeah, I've heard about it too. Now, I'm looking forward to my buddy read with Roz at Scally Dandling about the books for this. It was shortlisted for the 2022 International Booker Prize, and I love that the character is going to be older. The protagonist, we don't have enough books with older protagonists. And she also has a disability, if I remember correctly from all of the things I've been seeing. Now, after Rita's found dead in the church that she used to attend, the official investigation into the incident quickly closes, and then her sickly mother is the only person still determined to actually find out what happened and find the culprit. So it chronicles the difficult journey she has across the city suburbs, an old debt and a revealing conversation apparently. It is set to unravel the secrets of its characters and the hidden facets of authoritarianism and hypocrisy in our society. So this sounds right up my street. And then I went for Violets by Kyung-sook, translated from the Korean by Anton Her. Set in South Korea in 1970, it follows Sun, a lonely child ostracized by her community. She finds her one and only friend at some point, a girl called Nam-ai, and is happy in having that one friendship until a particular afternoon in a Minari field leads to an intimacy and then the violent rejection of San by Namai afterwards. So it says it sets San on a troubling path, and we then next meet her at age 22 when she happens upon a job at a flower shop. So I'm sure Violets is going to come in there somewhere. Throughout one hazy, volatile summer, she is introduced to a curious cast of characters in the form of the shop owner, a brash co-worker, kind farmers, aggressive customers, and more. She becomes fueled by a quiet desperation to jumpstart her life properly and plunges into an obsession. Throughout it all, her life is tinged, or rather her memories and experiences are tinged by what happened with her friend. So I'm really curious. That just sounds a little bit mysterious but intriguing. Yeah, those are my picks. I'm curious about the obsession. I'm actually wondering whether to put this one first or this one first. I think they'll all be good anyway. It has been interesting choosing or trying to choose these books, because when I started looking, I thought, let me try and find some books from Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Tanzania. And I realized that it wasn't easy, or I found it kind of impossible, because they didn't qualify for women in translation. The books were written in English already, and that makes me look forward to a book that I pre-ordered and should be arriving in the post any day now for me. It is called Decolonizing Translation and focuses on the recent and growing conversations around re-evaluating the way literature is written, published, and read in the Anglophone world, pushing for a dismantling of the idea of a Western canon and questioning the dominance of English language writing in representing places and communities. If you've already picked your reads, do let me know what you've gone with, and in case you're struggling to decide what to read for Women in Translation Month, I would recommend any of the following books by Korean authors. Han Kang's The White Book, for people wanting something unusual and experimental without necessarily going into the surreal. So The White Book blends fiction, memoir, and poetry to reflect on life. Our narrator is feeling the heavy weight of living life, not just for herself, but for the deceased elder sister that never made it beyond infancy. In this book, white symbolizes so many different things, and the color is used to tie together various themes. I took my time reading this, and between featuring it on my early April vlog and actually completing the book, I noticed it popping up all over booktube, and there are some really good deep dives that came out May and June. So I've never fully reviewed it on my channel, but if you want to watch a full review before or after you read it, then I recommend checking out Brandon's Bookshelf. He reviewed it about 2 months ago. I've linked his channel below. Also, look out for a summary and analysis by the Codex Cantina. It's coming out in August as part of their focus on women in translation. So definitely one that I highly recommend. Next up, I think this one is really underrated. Lemon by yeo-sun. This is really a slice of life novel dabbling with murder mystery, and I highlighted it in a short video I did last November. And since then, again, I have seen full deep dives on booktube popping up. And I can't be the only one, therefore, who thinks that this book deserves better than to fly under the radar. I think it would be rated more highly if people didn't go into it expecting a full-on murder mystery, which largely the blurb leads you to think you're going to be getting, because the murder is only part of what the story is. The main focus makes it more a slice of life novel with a twist involving a murder that ties together the characters in the book. This isn't about the perpetrator, it is instead a deep dive into the lives of 3 people who had a relationship with the victim. You've got her best friend, her sister, and a classmate. And the voices are really distinctive. And so while I usually like just one narrator, I didn't mind that it was actually split into 3. I saw someone pondering as well why it's called Lemon, and I think that that is based on the person on the cover who is representing the person who was murdered. At the time that they died, they are wearing a lemon yellow dress. Despite this being a thin or book or a novella, you'll be surprised at how much detail is in here. And the color yellow, especially lemon yellow, but yellow in general, crops up everywhere, and there's different motifs. And if you're the sort of person who likes that sort of attention to detail, then you'll love this. If it goes over your head, then you might miss some symbolism. But anyway, you can go from scenes that are highlighting Korea's obsession perhaps with plastic surgery and beauty, and the injustice of the haves and have-nots, that disparity in class. And then you'll go to something that should seem mundane but is actually really poetic, drawing our attention to a motif or to the color yellow and the symbolism. So, for example, there was a scene in which the main character who is talking explains that they have got a lazy afternoon, and they've got the afternoon sun spilling in into the living room, and the light sort of like highlights the dust on the counters. And while this is happening, they are biting into an egg and enjoying that lovely yolk. And there's something about the symbolism of the egg and then the light and all of that. And you can add to the narrative if you are contemplative. So on to the next one, Shoko's Smile. I actually highlighted this one earlier in the year, but I will do it again because it deserves it. Shoko's Smile by Choi Yoon-young is translated by Sang Roy. The novel gets its title from the first of the 7 stories in this collection. I read this early in the year, and 4 of the 7, I would say, are still fresh in my mind, especially 1. But anyway, while the stories are short, their scope is grand enough to imagine each of them playing out as a complete novel or even an entire film. Everything from Japan's 3-decade occupation of Korea to the consequences of the Vietnam War is considered, but never in a way that actually pulls the reader out of the central characters' stories that are happening here and now. The story, the setting, and the internal monologues will provide the reader with a greater insight into who the characters are. I loved the realism. I appreciated the stories didn't steer away from being serious. They are emotional, painful, and complex. And there are many things that come into play to varying degrees that are in our own lives, things that we can really relate to. So issues like mental health, politics, violence, ill health, aging, sexuality, discrimination, privilege, and trauma. Anything you can think of, you will suddenly, read it here and think, I can relate. So very real and hard-hitting. Cursed Bunny, definitely not very real. Genre-defying, moving from body horror to science fiction to the supernatural, and oddly, it's a blend that I loved. I don't think I'd want a full collection of body horror, and I appreciated therefore having a variety in these 10 stories. This is by Bora Chung and translated by Anton He. Now the 10 stories here, like I say, they each have a touch of the surreal. They are also absurd, and you can, within the surreal landscape, actually pick up on societal themes: capitalism, societal expectation, aging, morality, and more. In some cases, you think less and just sit back and enjoy the words that flow around you, like you're being, transported to some strange dreamlike landscape bordering on the real and the nightmarish. And at other times, you can really just immerse yourself in the narrative and go, I can relate to the following. So there's some that feel a little bit more real and tangible, and the others for me just sort of were more abstract. So yes, if this is something that appeals to you, highly recommend it as well. I highly recommend all 4 of them, so I don't know why I keep saying that. But let me know in the comments if any of those appeal to you, and thank you so much for joining me. Take care. Bye.